friends, and welcome to Cait Casts On. If you're new here, my name is Caitlin, and I'm a knitter, spinner, sewist, and sometimes quilter based out of the Pacific Northwest. I have a podcast episode for you today with lots of fun updates, so grab your craft of choice, settle in, and let's get started. Hi there! I hope you've been doing well the last couple weeks. I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you today. Just give you lots of fun updates on what I've been making this spring. Before we get started, today I'm wearing my recently finished 1988 cardigan, which is a pattern by Hannah Kim. I knit this using the recommended yarn, which is Biche Les Petites Lambs wool. And I'm really pleased with the result. This was my first time using this yarn in a sweater project, and I just absolutely love the loft that is in this whole garment. It feels very lightweight and easy, and just really lovely. The color work bloomed beautifully. I'm very happy with that. The steeks in this sweater are really secure. Just like a 10 out of 10 from the process of making and like following the pattern. That was fantastic. And the finished object I'm just really pleased with as well. So very excited to be wearing that for the first time on the podcast today. And then before I get started with finished objects, I did just want to mention I'm thinking about doing a Q&A video here soon. I've kind of been going through some past comments on previous videos, and there have been a few that I did technically like answer in the comments, but I feel like they would benefit from either like a larger discussion or in some cases like a visual example of what I'm talking about. So if you have any questions that you would like to add to that list, definitely leave them in the comments below. They can be about my makes, they can be about me and my life, whatever goes. So yeah, if you have anything that you'd like me to sit down and answer, definitely leave that in the comments below. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get into finished objects. The first one that I want to share with you today is knitted as per usual. And that is the first of several green projects that we'll go over today. But this is my Maggie Vest, which is a pattern by Petite Knit. I knit this using Kelborn Woolen Scout in the color Juniper Heather, which is just a really nice like forest green. And then I ended up finishing off the vest with these really lovely cork buttons here that I just think add a nice touch of contrast to the green. I was debating between these or some just like basic tortoiseshell resin buttons that I have, and was kind of going back and forth. I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. My husband voted for these when I asked him, so that's what I ended up doing. And I am really happy actually with the choice that I made. I think that it adds just a nice touch of contrast, and also I think the material is just like a bit nicer to the touch than just like resin buttons. So I think it's just a nice experience overall, and I am really happy with that. I am not gonna lie, I was a little bit nervous about this finished object. I had very high hopes for it going in. I don't have a ton of vests in my wardrobe, but I really want to incorporate more. A lot of the outfit inspiration I save has vests, and so this was kind of my first attempt at adding one of these to my wardrobe very intentionally. And I was really excited about the crew neck style. I have one other vest that I've knit and it's V-neck, and I think that that might be the reason why I have a hard time styling it and wearing it, one of the reasons. So I was really excited about the crew neck. I was really excited about the cardigan style vest, and I had really high hopes for this throughout the process. I knit the size recommended in the pattern for my bust circumference, so I have the recommended ease, which I think is like 2 inches. It's not very much ease. But I, just trusted the pattern and thought, let's give it a shot. And I, along the way, I was feeling pretty good about it. And then the closer I got to the end, the more I started to wonder if maybe I made a mistake in the size I chose. It just felt a little bit tighter than I was anticipating. And then when I was trying it on over t-shirts, which is how I was picturing styling this vest for the most part, like the t-shirts were bunching a little bit at the sleeves, and I was just kind of like, I don't know. But I decided to move forward, go ahead and block it, and finish it and just go from there and use this as a learning experience. So I tried styling it over the t-shirts like originally planned, and it was okay. I think I can play around with the color of t-shirt that I wear underneath. I have a few different, I have like white, off-white, navy, and then like a sage green. So I think there's a few options for the kinds of t-shirts and the colors of t-shirts I can wear under this. That will be okay. But I actually ended up just trying it over a tank top so that you couldn't see anything underneath. It just looked, you know, this was all you could see on top. And I actually really, really liked how that looked. I just kind of was trying it on and playing around with stuff, and I ended up wearing that combination for the rest of the day. I was really excited about it. So I think I just need to practice how to style these and just kind of let myself be a little bit more creative in that, and I think I will get a lot of wear out of them. So I'm feeling much better about it now than I did when I initially cast off. But I think that's just kind of part of the process sometimes when you're incorporating new items into your wardrobe. So that's okay. And I'm really happy with kind of how I ended up styling it. This is what the back looks like. Sorry for the fold lines. It's been a few days since I wore it. It has these really lovely increased details on the back panel that I absolutely love seeing in garments. And then all of the finishes are in 1x1 rib. I did consider making the button band a double knit button band and like making that modification to the pattern. But I was kind of losing steam on this project. I just kind of wanted to see it come together. And also I felt like it could use a little bit of texture in the center since this is such a plain stockinette fabric that I ended up going with the 1x1 and figuring, you know, I can always rip it out and do a double knit later. But actually I'm really pleased with how the 1x1 looks. I think this is the cleanest 1x1 rib button band I've ever done. It's not really pulling at the bottom or sagging at the bottom at all or at the top. It like is pretty even, you know, on the pickup edges and stuff. And so I'm pretty happy with that actually, and I think it looks really, really nice. That being said, I did make a very slight modification to the pattern, and I added additional rows to the width of my button band because my buttons were a little bit bigger than recommended. And so I wanted to make something that felt nice and proportional to my slightly larger button size. So I think I ended up adding 4 rows to the length of this, 2 before the buttonhole and 2 after. And I think that that worked out really well. I'm very happy with kind of the scale of things. But other than that, I knit this pretty much exactly to pattern. I shortened the body a little bit just for my preference and where I like things to land on me. But other than that, no modifications. So yeah, it's a really fun pattern to knit. I'm excited to wear this more this spring. I think it's actually quite comfortable for spring weather. And so I'm sure it will be quite comfortable for fall weather as well. So I'm very, very excited about that. The next thing I have to share with you, you will sense a theme with color, is this really lovely pair of bright green Fable Socks. The Fable Socks is a pattern that I'm currently working on developing. It's this really lovely pointelle lace and rib stitch that I think just looks really lovely and kind of delicate, but also the really bold colors kind of balance that out, which is really fun. I knit these using Gusto Wool Core in the color 1019. It's just a nice Kelly green, shamrock green, and I think these are a lot of fun. This is my second pair, and I kind of wrote the pattern as I knit the first sock and just like wrote the instructions in a way that I felt was good, and then I followed the instructions that I had written as I knit the second sock, verified things, kind of edited things a little bit to be a bit clearer, and that was a really good process for me. This will be my first pattern that I release, so it's kind of like learning to speak a new language in some ways, and I just want to make sure I'm doing a decent job at it. So this was a really good checkpoint for me in terms of just kind of following a pattern and feeling pretty good about it. The pattern is coming along really well. I'm making good progress. I've graded for all the sizes, written charts for all the sizes, all the instructions are done. And now I'm just kind of starting to knit some samples in some other sizes, which I will show you one of those in a little bit. But it's going along really well. I'm kind of moving at just kind of a steady and slow pace and just trying to enjoy the process as I learn this entirely new skill. But I think I'll be calling for testers in the next probably 4 weeks. I do have a trip coming up, and so I think I'll probably wait until I get back to call for testers, but that will be coming soon. And in the meantime, I have a couple pairs of Fable Socks that I can enjoy for myself. So it's been really fun to work on these. And yeah, I'm loving the green, obviously. And you'll see even more of that in a second. But yeah, it's been a really fun time working on these. The Gusto wool, this is my first time working with this yarn. And I think it's decent. It's definitely less soft than a lot of hand-dyed yarns. So if that's your jam, if you like, sometimes the hand-dyed sock yarns feel a little bit too soft to you, I think you might really enjoy these. I definitely feel that way sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't bother me and sometimes it does. I'm excited to see how these wear, since this is my first time using this yarn for socks. It is superwash woolen nylon, so I'm sure it will be just as good as any other pair of sock yarn. But the stitch definition, I feel like, is quite lovely. And yeah, I think I'm excited to see how they wear. My next finished object is a spin that I get to share with you. I've been working on this one for, I think, a month now. This one took me a little bit longer to finish, but I'm really, really thrilled with the results. So I have 2 skeins of this yarn here, but this is technically just from one 4-ounce braid. And this is Skagit Woolen Works Romney Lamb in chocolate. It's an undyed colorway, but it's this really lovely chocolate brown color. It has kind of some lighter gray specks in there. But the reason why this took me a little bit longer to spin up is because this is my very first Woolen Spun yarn. I was kind of treating this spin as an experiment, just kind of letting myself figure things out and like make mistakes and fail as I went along, and just try new things. So yeah, it was a little bit slower going, but I had a lot of fun along the way, and I'm so thrilled with the yarn that came out of this. I feel like a whole new world has been opened up for me in my spins. And it's just been a lot of fun. I'm really excited because I actually have another 4-ounce braid of this exact fiber. And so I'm really excited to give that a spin as well and get some more yardage out of this. So just to give you some quick stats on this yarn. So like I said, and like you can see, there's 2 skeins of yarn here, but together they total 4 ounces or 100 grams. I ended up doing 2 skeins because I ran out of room on my bobbin, and I just decided to kind of split it in half as closely as I could. But together they weigh 100 grams, and I have about 520 yards between the 2 of these. And they are about 12 wraps per inch, which is about a sport weight yarn. So I have a lot of yardage in here. This is a very lofty yarn, for being the sport weight and only 100 grams. And between the 2 of these, on average, I have about 2,100 yards per pound as my grist. So that is absolutely like the loftiest, most airiest yarn I've ever spun in my life by a long shot, like by double. So it's so lightweight. It's so lofty. It's really, really soft. It feels so much softer than it did in braid form. And it really bloomed really nicely, in the washing process. I did finish these by putting them in hot water, and like just pressing them down very gently with some wool wash and hot water, and waiting a few hours until the water was like room temperature cool. And so I feel like they really bloomed because of that process. I did not do any thwacking or snapping or anything like that. I just kind of let it be, just kind of as a control. Because again, I'm treating this as an experiment. And I just kind of want to see what bare bones basic soaking would do. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this. I don't totally know what I want to make yet, but I'm leaning towards maybe a shawl. I did think that maybe I would get enough yardage between my 2 braids to do a vest if I wanted to, but I don't know that I want this color of vest. It's really close to my hair color, so I'm not sure. But a shawl I think would look really lovely. I think also originally when I was kind of not sure how the yarn would turn out, if it would just be really inconsistent or what, I did think about maybe doing like some stuffies with it, like a teddy bear or something like that. I thought that could be quite cute. So there's definitely a few ideas popping around my head, but I'm really excited to knit with it soon. Because this is my first Woolen Spun yarn, it did cross my mind, and actually Jackie from Jackie is Making talked about doing this with her spins as well. It crossed my mind that maybe I want to go ahead and knit with this now before I do any more Woolen Spun projects on my wheel. Just to kind of get a sense of how it works up, how I like knitting with it, so that I can make any corrections to my next Woolen Spun project. Like maybe it needs more twist or less twist, or I don't know, maybe there's just something about it that maybe I would change going forward, but I would only know about if I actually knit with it. So that has crossed my mind, and I am thinking about that as a possibility. But also I might spin the second braid of this fiber just so that I have the yardage and they'll be like decently consistent with each other at least. And then maybe I will save my other fibers that I would like to spin woolen until after I knit with the first project. I don't know. We'll see, but I'm really excited and really pleased with how this came out. It's such a stark difference from all of the other yarns I've made, in just a really exciting way. I feel like a whole new world has been opened up for me with these. And yeah, I feel like I'm going to look at fiber so much differently now, and just see so many more possibilities in certain braids. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun and very rewarding to step out of my comfort zone a little bit and just give something new a try. So I'm excited to continue down that path and hopefully get fully into long draw. This one I kind of went back and forth a little bit. I'm mostly just kind of letting twist in between my hands, but occasionally playing around with doing some long draw, just to kind of get a feel for it. And yeah, it's just been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to dive more into that world. The last finished object that I have to share today is a sewing project, and that is my finished Karl shirt. This is a pattern by Sewing Machina, and it's essentially just a big, huge, oversized button-up shirt. And to make this, I used Matchy Matchy Sewing Club's Cloud Linen in the color Asparagus. Again, more green. I'm feeling green lately, apparently. And then I finished it with some really lovely coconut shell buttons that I found at my local yarn store that are just like a slightly darker shade of green that I think add a nice little bit of contrast to the front. I also added a cute little tag to the inside just because I had one. So that's a nice little detail there. Overall, I'm really happy with how this came out. This is my third Karl shirt. It's not a new pattern for me by any means. I was reminded of kind of how fiddly some of the parts of this are, just kind of how detailed you have to be, and just how many steps in general there are to make a shirt like this. But for me, the finished project is kind of worth that hassle of making it. So I'm excited to have this one complete and be able to wear it. Since I talked to you last, I attached the collar and collar stand. I did the cuffs. I did the hem at the bottom. And then also all of the buttons and buttonholes have been sewed on. My sewing machine does have a buttonhole foot, which makes things a lot easier when it works and decides to cooperate with me. Typically, before I get started with buttonholes using that foot, I have several pieces of scrap fabric out to test to make sure I like the size of the buttonhole, to test to make sure it's going to work with the number of layers that I'm trying to go through, all of that stuff. So there's a bit of like setup to make sure it's going to work right. But then I was able to move through the front placket of the buttons here pretty smoothly. There was no real errors in that process. So that's always a big relief because that's, you know, where it's really obvious. And using a buttonhole foot, there's just less control. The machine just kind of wants to do what it wants to do. And you just have to hope that you set it up right and that it won't get jammed. So thankfully, I didn't really run into any issues on the front of the shirt. However, and I encountered this on my last version of the Karl shirt as well, my machine does not like to use the buttonhole foot on the cuffs, which there are versions in the pattern where you can use tie cuffs instead of buttoned cuffs. But obviously I chose buttoned. And yeah, unfortunately my machine, it's something with the feed dogs. The feed dogs do not want to move the cuff. I think it's just a little too thick for it because it's fully underneath the foot. The feed dogs have complete contact with the piece of fabric. I don't know why, it just doesn't want to move. So that's a bit unfortunate. So I did have to, let's see if I can bring it up close. I did have to hand sew the buttonholes on both of my cuffs. This is definitely the better looking one of the two. I got a little bit better the second time around. It's nowhere near as neat as the machine is, but it's totally acceptable because when it is buttoned, it is 95% covered. You can't even see the buttonhole. So that's totally fine. I'm not mad about that at all. I'm just relieved that the front looks good because that was definitely going to be more noticeable if I had to hand sew those. But yeah, the button covers it mostly when it is closed. And then I also wear this shirt primarily with the sleeves rolled up. And so you can't even see the cuff like at all or the buttonhole at all when the sleeves are rolled up. So that's totally fine. I did make a modification to the pattern this time around because I wanted to be able to roll up my sleeves and not have a contrasting serger thread color showing. I just keep white thread in my serger, and 99.9% of the time that's totally fine. And typically there is a serged seam right here that would show through. And actually, let me show you. The side seam of my shirt has that white thread. And so you can see it's kind of obvious. It's a pretty clear contrast. And I just didn't necessarily want that to show on the sleeves when I rolled them up, just knowing that this is how I wear them like 70, 80% of the time. I ended up expanding the pattern pieces a little bit, widening them so that I had double the seam allowance and I could do a double folded hem and a French seam on the sleeves. Alternatively, so that I didn't have to have those serged edges there. I did consider, you know, getting like a gray serger thread to be closer to this, or even a green one, but none of the green ones were a super great match. And I don't really ever find the need to have anything other than white. So I don't know. It just felt like, all things considered, altering the pattern pieces would probably be the way to go if I could figure it out, which I could. So that was great. I think if I make any future Karl shirts with darker fabric, that will probably be a modification that I continue into those versions. Just because, yeah, I think it turned out really well. It looks really clean and polished. And yeah, I'm really, really pleased with it. So yeah, that's my Karl shirt. I would definitely rate this pattern like intermediate, probably. I think it's kind of at the bounds of my sewing skill. Like, this is probably the most complicated thing that I have made. And not that I couldn't make something rated more difficult, but I think it would be definitely a slower process with more seam ripping and just like correcting things as I went. So it's definitely probably an intermediate pattern, but it has a lot of really lovely details. I love the pleats on the sleeves here. I think those look really nice. There's pleats on the back. The collar has some really nice top stitching, as does the back panel if you want it to. And then the hem also has kind of a nice slit up the side a bit, which I just think is a really, really nice detail. I definitely made some mistakes along the way, but all in all, in the finished project, I don't think that you can tell. So that's always like kind of my rule of thumb, is if anyone else could point those out to me, maybe I would change and try and fix them a little bit. But if I'm the only one that's going to know that they're there, that's totally fine. So I think this was a success. And yeah, I'm excited to wear it as the weather gets warmer. That is it for finished objects. So let's go ahead and talk about works in progress. Up first, I have made some really good progress on my Umbria summer top. This is a pattern by Cookie the Knitter, and it's a really lovely garter rib raglan style tee, which the stitch definition is just absolutely lovely. And it's a cardigan style, so you work a button band kind of as you go. So I have a few buttonholes that I've already worked, and I'm just kind of, you know, working them as I make progress on the shirt, which is really nice. It's nice that I don't have to go back and do a button band later. This is quite drapey, so sorry if it's not showing the best. I'm knitting this using Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Putty, and I'm really enjoying how the yarn feels in this stitch pattern. It feels very light and airy, but it also like has a sense of coverage still that I think will be good for summer garments. Last time I showed you this project, I barely had anything to show for it. I had finished the collar here and was like maybe half an inch into the short rows. I basically had nothing to share. So since we talked last time, I have finished the entire yoke, all of the raglan increases, split for sleeves, and am a few inches into the body. So I feel like I'm making really good progress. It's knit on US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needles. So that being considered, I really feel like this is moving at a good pace. I do really enjoy the way the stitch pattern is worked. You know, the right side and wrong side are a little bit different from each other, but you never have to like purl an entire row. So that's really nice. And yeah, it's been really enjoyable, and I feel like I'm making very quick progress on it, which is good because I would love to finish this before I leave on my trip in a few weeks. And at this point in time, I do feel like that's doable. So I'm feeling really good about that. I think, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 buttonholes done. I think there's 6 or 7 buttons in my size. So I'm definitely like halfway through the length of this. And now that I've split for sleeves, there's fewer stitches. So I think it will go by pretty quickly. And then it is short sleeves, so I don't think that the sleeves will take very long at all. And like I said, I'm doing the button band as I go, so like that's going to be done. I am modifying the pattern slightly. The pattern actually calls for some decreases underneath the arms for some waist shaping, and I just decided to omit that. I typically like boxier fits. And when it was time for me to make my first decrease in the body, I was thinking there wasn't a ton of space under the arm. And I was like, I don't really feel like doing a decrease yet. That doesn't seem quite right. I have not tried this on yet. So to be completely honest with you, that was a complete shot in the dark, just based on gut and really nothing else. But yeah, generally speaking, I do like boxier fits. So I think it will be fine. And based on the amount of decreases that are recommended in the pattern, I don't think it would make a ton of a difference. So I think it will be fine. And yeah, I like the fact that the stitch pattern right now is seamless underneath the sleeves. And if I did decreases, there would be a bit of a seam there where you could see where decreases were happening. That's not a big deal. And in fact, I think that could be a really lovely design detail. But I'm also like not mad about missing that element. So yeah, I'm feeling very good about this. I'm really happy with like the yarn choice and everything for this pattern. It feels very, very nice. If you caught the last episode, you know that I actually frogged a past project and reclaimed the yarn from it to knit this with it instead. And I really, really like this combination of this yarn and this pattern much better than the previous project that I had it in. So I'm feeling very good about that, and I'm excited to keep making progress on it. I do have my buttons picked out for this, and I'm really excited about them, but it's just a nice little like periwinkle blue button. And it has kind of a sheen to it that I think is really nice. I'm not sure how well that's coming across, but hopefully you get at least a rough idea. Obviously, when I sew them on and it's a finished garment, I think it will be a little bit more obvious, but that's the plan for the buttons. I'm really excited about that. I think those buttons will help this tie into some other makes that I have planned to create this spring. So I'm really excited about that. And yeah, I'm just gonna keep making progress on it and hopefully have it done before my trip. The next work in progress that I have to share is a new cast on since the last time we talked. And that is the Cove Vest. This is a upcoming pattern by the Knit Pearl Girl. I'm currently testing this. Sophie is currently making some pattern updates to the Cove sweater, which I have knit 2 of. Absolutely love that pattern. And she's planning on kind of updating the grading a little bit, updating the gauge a little bit on it, and re-releasing the pattern, I think, this coming fall. So I'm part of that test group, and as part of that kind of update, she's also including a mod for a vest. And so that is what I am knitting. I'm very excited to have a Cove vest in my wardrobe, and it's coming along really well. I have finished the back panel. It has really lovely increased details, just like the Cove sweater. I really love the back increased details on the Cove. You knit the back panel first, and then you pick up stitches on each of the shoulders, knit the sides separately for a little bit first, and then join them in the front underneath the neck there. Knit the front panel together for a little bit, and then you join under the arms. And I am maybe like 3 inches into the body, so making decent progress. This gauge is quite large. I had to size up my needle, so I'm knitting on a US 9 or 5.5 millimeter. The pattern calls for US 8 or 5 millimeters. So it's a decently large gauge, and I am knitting mine in really lovely Durare Natura Gilead, and this is the color Le Bleu. Just a lovely, lovely blue color. I'm absolutely obsessed with this yarn. It feels so good in this pattern. It's so lofty and airy and lightweight. And I absolutely love the little variegations and like speckles that come out in this yarn. A little bit of heathering and stuff like that. Maybe you can get an idea with it close up. There's just a lot of visual texture to this, even though it's a solid color. So I'm really excited about this yarn. This vest is going to fit a bit differently than the Maggie vest. I think it's going to be quite a bit more oversized. I think based on the current fit of how it's holding up against my body, it's going to go over my shoulders a bit too. So I think that that will be, you know, just nice and different. I'm excited to, like I said, just work vests into my wardrobe a little bit more, play around with what I like and the ease and things like that. So I'm excited that this one's a bit different. And then it's also going to have a pretty sizable 2x2 rib collar, as well as hems. And I haven't gone this far in the pattern, but I'm assuming it will have a 2x2 rib on the sleeves here, for the vest version. This one is cruising along really well. I'm very, very pleased with how it's coming along. The yarn is like lovely in this pattern. I'm really excited to block it and watch it bloom a little bit more like it did with my swatch. I think it's just going to be a really lovely, fun piece to have in my wardrobe. My next work in progress is actually the sample of the Fable sock that I was talking about a minute ago. This is the 56 stitch version of the sock. When I was grading the pattern, it was really important to me that I was able to have a wide range of sizes in this sock. So I have sizes from 48 stitches all the way up to 80 stitches, and then like they're in increments of 8 stitches in between sizes. So 5 sizes total. But because of how I designed the original sock, which I wasn't necessarily intending to write a pattern for it, that design is divisible by 16 stitches. And so I kind of had to have some creative solutions to grade for my 56 stitch sock and my 72 stitch sock. So the charts are a little bit different for those sizes. And I wanted to knit some samples of these sizes first so that I could make sure that I liked the look of it, that it still felt true to the original design that I intended, all that stuff, but also because I want to be very transparent in the pattern and on the pattern sales page and things like that, that the charts are a little bit different depending on the size you make. So yeah, it was really important to me that it still felt like the Fable stock and still felt true to the design. And I'm really happy with how it came out. I really feel like it succeeds in that. This is the front of the sock here and then upside down, but this is the back of the sock. So it really still has, you know, the same design elements with the same lace, little pointelle motif, ribbing, and then also it's symmetrical, which is kind of the 3 core pieces of the design of this sock. And so I was able to still fit all of those things in and grade for those in-between sizes in a way that I'm actually quite happy with. I didn't mention, but I am knitting up this sample using Cascade Heritage, and I believe this color is cedar green. And it's really, really funny actually, because I got this yarn in and it is like an identical match to the fabric that I used for my Karl shirt, which I just think is too funny. And so because this is just a sample for the pattern, I wanted to be able to take some photos and then also, like I said, follow the instructions for a different size myself. I'm just going to do the one sock, and I'm probably not going to use that much yarn since this is a smaller size. And since I'm not knitting this for like an actual human, I probably will make it a like shorter size foot as well. So I should have enough yarn left over, I think, that I could knit myself a pair of socks in this yarn as well, so I can have a perfect match to my Karl shirt. That would just be too fun. So I think that's the plan there. And yeah, it's going along really well. I'm feeling very motivated and just really happy with how the pattern's coming together. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about that there. My last work in progress is a new spin since I finished my Woolen Spun, and I went ahead and went back to doing a worsted spun for this one. I just kind of wanted a palette cleanser. This is my Malabrigo Nube in the color Potion, I think is how it's pronounced. And this is the completed first bobbin that I have of this color. I'll put a picture of what the fiber looked like before I started spinning. But for this spin, I'm kind of doing like a semi-fractal. It's not fractal, but one ply has faster color changes than the other. Just how I divided it is not technically a fractal. This was my first time spinning using Malabrigo Nube. I have spun using Malabrigo Cloud, which is the superwash version of the fiber. This is just 100% merino, non-superwash. And I had heard kind of mixed reviews about this fiber. I think it is quite compacted compared to most fibers and can be harder to draft. So I had definitely heard some warnings that this might not be the most pleasant thing to spin. And if I'm being honest, it hasn't been the most pleasant thing to spin, but it also hasn't been horrible either. It's been fine. It is a little bit tougher to draft. It is a little bit more compacted. I did give it a quick steam to kind of help loosen it up maybe. But overall, it's perfectly fine. It's like a 6 out of 10. It would not necessarily be the very first fiber that I would pull for. It would not be on my list of desert island fibers, but it's totally fine and it is readily accessible near me. So I could definitely see myself spinning this again in the future. Maybe with the caveat that maybe I also just got like a good braid and it wasn't too compacted. Maybe the next braid of Malabrigo that I spin will be worse. I'm not sure. Like I said, it is one of the more readily available fibers in local yarn stores near me. So I just kind of wanted to see for myself what I thought of it. And so far it's been okay. It's been fine. I am spinning quite thin for this. I think it will probably end up being a fingering weight 2-ply. And so maybe that has something to do with it too. I think if I was trying to spin thicker, that might be trickier with this fiber. But yeah, it's been fine so far. This is, like I said, the completed first bobbin. It has these really lovely blue and red tones in there. And then the second bobbin I just started, it's going to be like 4 times as frequent color changes. It's a 1-to-4 ratio. And I think that end of the braid that I pulled from, it has a little bit more green in it. So I think that will be really pretty kind of plied with this. And yeah, I just kind of needed, like I said, a palette cleanser, something that was a little bit less pressure. I just have the one braid of this, and so it's just going to be, you know, kind of a standalone skein, and it turns out how it turns out. So I just kind of needed that after doing the Woolen Spun and having so much energy go into that. But this has been really fun, nice palette cleanser. And yeah, just very little pressure on this one. So it's fun to kind of get back into that. That's all I have for works in progress. So let's go ahead and get into purchases and plans. I just have one thing that I've got in the last few weeks, and that is a book. But it has been very, very helpful for me in the process of writing my first pattern. So I thought I would just share with you. This is called The Knitting Pattern Writing Handbook, How to Write Great Patterns That Knitters Will Love to Make by Christina McGrath and Sarah Walworth. This was recommended in an Instagram carousel that popped up on my feed. And I saw that they were recommending this book. So I thought, hey, I'll give it a try. And so far it's been a really lovely little resource to have. I have read the first 2 chapters in completion and then like popped in and out of other parts of the book as those sections came up for me while I was writing the pattern. And it's been really, really helpful. I do want to continue reading like from beginning to end and actually go through every single chapter in completion in this book. But it's been a really helpful resource for me as I kind of figure out the whole world of pattern writing. Let me just give you a quick idea of the chapters inside here. So there's information about foundations of a good knitting pattern, components of a pattern. There's a whole chapter about gauge, about charts, how to size, common sweater pitfalls, and then also working with a tech editor are kind of the main chapters in this book. So yeah, there's a lot covered in here, and I just think it's been really helpful even for like very nitty-gritty things. I am a graphic designer by profession, so I feel like there is some kind of niche information that I was aware of because I'm a graphic designer, but like in terms of pattern design, in terms of accessibility, in terms of font size and colors and contrast and things like that, there's some information in here that I think would be really helpful if you don't have that knowledge especially, but it is also nice to know that they're taking those kinds of considerations into mind when writing patterns because those are very important from a design perspective. This has been a really fun book to add to my little knitting library, and I'm excited to continue to reference it. And the last thing I wanted to share with you was just some plans on my next sewing project. I'm planning on sewing the Sandra skirt by Sid Graham next, and I don't have much to share other than I have cut my main fabric. And it's this really lovely Georgette viscose fabric from Blackbird. This was dead stock. I think it's out of stock now, unfortunately. But it's just really lovely, lightweight. It is pretty sheer, so I have a lining going underneath it. But this is going to be a Sandra skirt, and I'm really excited about it. I just cut out my main fabric last night. I did kind of go through quite the experience so far with this fabric. I realized when I opened up my pattern to like start printing the pattern pieces that I under-ordered fabric like decently significantly by more than a yard. So that was a bummer. At first I was thinking, okay, like I just won't be able to do the version of the skirt with godets. I'm just going to have to do a simple skirt. I won't have enough fabric to do godets, which I really wanted to do and I had planned to do, and I thought I ordered enough fabric to do, but I didn't, and that was okay, and that was kind of the plan. And then I printed the pattern pieces, and for a minute there, it looked like I wasn't even going to have enough fabric to print the simple skirt. I think my fabric shrunk a bit in the wash, and so I had even less than I thought I did. And then I realized, thankfully it kind of saved the day, that my pattern pieces were printed slightly over scale. I don't know what happened there because I definitely set it to 100% scale when I printed. And I even checked the like scale box before I like taped and cut everything together. And I noticed it was like a little bit over what it was supposed to be by like the width of the line of the box. But I thought, oh, that's kind of odd, but I'm sure it'll be fine. It's a small enough difference. It was not, it was like a ½ inch off at the widest point of my pattern piece. So fixing that and fixing the scale of the pattern pieces meant that I could fit the simple skirt, which was a relief. I was really stressed about that for a minute. And then also I ended up shortening the pattern pieces a little bit, just for my preference, the height that I want to make my skirt. And I ended up with enough fabric left over that I realized I could do godets, just modified godets. So I ended up kind of modifying that pattern piece. I had to shorten it a bit, which was fine because I shortened the general skirt pieces as well. And then I made them, I think like maybe 25% narrower overall for my size. And I was able to get some godets out of it. So I'm really excited about that. I'm kind of nervous to do the pattern and sew the pattern because this will be my first time making this skirt. And so making modifications to it like that might be a little bit risky, but we'll have some fun along the way and we'll figure it out. But I just kind of wanted to share this project too. I'm really excited about how drapey and flowy this is going to be. I think it's going to be a really lovely spring summer skirt. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. So stay tuned to see how that goes. I'm going to be tackling sewing that probably this upcoming weekend. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully things go smoothly even with the modifications. So yeah, that's all I have to share with you today. I hope you had a nice time sitting down and chatting with me and found a lot of joy in whatever you've been working on. As a reminder, if you have any Q&As about my makes, about this podcast, about my life, whatever, definitely leave them in the comments below and I will kind of gather them together in a document and hopefully film a Q&A video soon. As always, you can come over and say hi to me on Instagram or Ravelry. My username is Cait in both of those locations, and I will leave them linked in the description below. If you haven't already, if you could take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel, that really, really helps me out and helps support me in making this podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.